Hi, I'm Alexander, and in this video I want to go over the key differences between the Panasonic G7 domestic version and the international version. When you look online at the different prices, the domestic version is more expensive than the international version. And the biggest difference is that the domestic version, if bought in the US, comes with a warranty. And if you buy the international version, you don't get that warranty. I now have both because I originally started with the domestic version, which is here on the left, and I had some water damage to my camera, so now it is completely destroyed. It will turn on, I can go through the menus functions, but the sensor is so screwed up that unfortunately this is no longer going to work. You can just see all the static lines there. It's just a mess. So figured I'd make a video to show you what are the key differences. And there are three main differences between these. First is that the domestic version of the G7 does have a warranty and the international version does not. We've gotten that out of the way. The second thing is the chargers are different. This is the charger for the domestic G7, and you can see it's just something that it looks like something you just plug into the wall. Whereas with the international version of the G7, I actually like this one better. Same exact design, dimensions. I'll show some more video. The only thing is the international version, instead of having the prongs that flip out, it has a wire. And this wire makes it much easier to plug into an outlet if you have several things plugged into there, so you don't have this hanging off of it. That makes it very difficult. So with the international version, I really like that. Now here's the biggest question you have to ask yourself. What are the frames per second that you're going to shoot in? The domestic version shoots in 24 frames per second and 30 frames per second in 1080p and 4K. And it also shoots in 60 frames per second in 1080p. The international version is PAL standard, P-A-L. That means it shoots in 24 and 25 frames per second in 4K and 50 frames per second in 1080p. So with the international version, you'll never record in 30 frames per second. You'll never record in 60 frames per second 1080p like you can with the domestic version. For me, I didn't know this. I did not read this in the specs. It's not a big deal for me because I record all of my videos in 24 frames per second. It's the cinema standard. It just streams so much better on YouTube because you have 6 less frames per second taking up the bandwidth. So motion and things actually come out better on YouTube with 24 frames per second. But if 60 frames per second slow motion is a big thing for you, then that's a deal breaker. You definitely want to go with the domestic version. I'm not ever going to use 25 frames per second or 50 frames per second. So I'll only be using 24 frames per second on the international version. Cosmetically, these are exactly the same. All the markings, everything. There is no difference between the two. The menu functions, with the exception of the frames per second that I mentioned, are also exactly the same. So there's only 3 things that are different between the two. The warranty, the chargers, and the fact that the international version will only record in 25 frames per second. For more upcoming tutorials on how to get the most out of your G7, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I have lots of other videos, including a G7 time-lapse tutorial and even a micro documentary I filmed using this camera, The Journey to Gold Rose Mine.